Hello everybody, welcome back. This is a doozy of a video. I keep saying doozy. I'm excited about this video. This video, other than faith as a seed, Alma 32, and Ammon and King Lamoni in whatever part of Alma that's in, I have been looking forward to this one for a long time, and we have a lot of cool stuff. We are going to be directly comparing the poor authorship of Joseph Smith and how he writes a very exciting murder. And then we are going to be directly comparing that with an actually well-written murder we're going to be reading an excerpt from Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. So I'm so excited about this. We're also going to be listening to Dan Lafferty explain how he was actually motivated by and kind of felt very similar to Nephi when he was asked to kill Laban by an angel. So a lot of cool stuff is going on today. And then we're just going to dive in. Then we're just going to, do our regular thing where we analyze this, this project that the church did. And I'm excited. I'm very excited. So stay tuned. I'm going to start recording my screen right now. Here we go. Okay. I'm going to do a better job this video of letting it play out a little bit. I was a little skip happy last time because it was so boring. But then I remembered on this channel, when we're watching the Book of Mormon videos, boring is good, because it shows how bad of a book it is. So, as John DeLynn would say, without further ado, but as I would say, without further to do, let's watch this video.
And the prophet Lehi and his family are living in the wilderness outside of Jerusalem. God commands Lehi to send his sons back to the city to obtain sacred records from Laban, a wicked and powerful man. Based on actual events as recorded in the Book of Mormon, another testament of Jesus Christ.
The sass. There are ways to tell stories without using words that are much more subtle than what has just happened there. The Witness with Harrison Ford comes to mind. There's like a 4-minute scene in the kind of first third of the movie where Harrison Ford is not talking, but he's like watching a little Amish boy, and he's like trying to and the boy won't talk to him, and he's trying to figure out that the boy knows that there's been a murder, but he can't say it. Incredible movie. That's how you do some like speechless exposition without noise. Another obvious one is A Quiet Place, because obviously they're not talking. This is poorly done. The exposition here, the storytelling without words is kind of poorly done here.
Father?
Yes, Nephi. Come in. Come in, sit with me. The Lord hath commanded me that thou and thy brethren shall return to Jerusalem. Laban hath the record of the Jews, and also a genealogy of my forefathers, and they are engraven upon plates of brass. Thou and thy brother should go unto the house of Laban and seek the records, and bring them down hither into the wilderness.
I suppose Laman and Lemuel have refused?
They murmur, saying it is a hard thing which I have required of them. But I have not required it of them. But it is a commandment of the Lord.
The dialogue is so clunky. Ironically, I kind of stuttered on the word clunky, so now I'm clunky, but the dialogue is like choppy and it feels very unnatural. I wish that the church had rewritten the script a little bit and modernized it. I feel like they could have been well within their rights to do that and just kind of like make this flow more. Then we could remove one more filter of like, is this a good story or not? Because words are kind of like what make up stories, and so when your words are clunky, your whole story kind of falls apart.
I will go and do the things which the Lord hath commanded. For I know that the Lord giveth no commandment unto the children of men, save he shall prepare a way for them, that they may accomplish the thing which he commanded them.
So clunky.
Thou hast been blessed of the Lord.
So this reminds me of the scene in Under the Banner of Heaven, where Dan Lafferty and his family are his immediate family, his wife and kids, are kneeling around the bed in that hotel room, and he's like, "I will go anywhere, I will do anything," and they all start chanting that. I wonder, now he doesn't mention this in the interview that we're going to listen to later, but I wonder if he felt like Nephi in that instance as well, where he was like, Nephi was a good guy because he said, "I will go and do whatever the Lord commands." And yeah, I wonder if there are any parallels there. We are now going to skip ahead just a little bit. Yeah. Just trying to skip through like montages and get to like acting and dialogue.
As I say, we await word of your success.
Oh, please, sit.
Thank you.
Zoran, fetch this man some wine.
That will not be necessary. It is kind, but my visit will be brief.
Very well. Tell me, What have you come to discuss with me?
My father, Lehi, has sent me. The Lord has commanded us to ask thee for the records which are engraven upon the plates of brass, the records which contain the genealogy of my father.
The plates of brass have been handed down in my family for generations. Your father believes I should simply give them to you. Now, what if I were to cry out, claiming thou art a robber? Then I would be within my rights to slay you, would I not? Thou art a robber! I will slay thee!
Okay, so this is attempt number 1. There are 3 attempts in this episode of the Book of Mormon. So I know that the dark music is supposed to make us feel like Laban is a bad guy. However, I don't feel like so far I have been convinced that Lehi and his family are the good ones. We saw him copy that vision in the first video. Then we saw him say we have to leave. And now we are learning that while Lehi claims that the records that they want cover his genealogy, Laban is also saying that they cover his genealogy and that they've been in his family for a long time. So Laban seems well within his rights to keep the records here. Now, does he have maybe a little bit of anger issues where, like, maybe he shouldn't threaten to kill everybody who comes in and politely asks for a book that you have? Yeah, maybe that's a little extreme. So, maybe he shouldn't have done that. But also, he was very clearly just trying to, like, scare him off and not actually, like, he didn't actually pull the sword out and swing at him. So far, Laban's the good guy here.
Seems you did not fare so well.
At least I am alive. Called me a robber. Threatened to slay me.
Now what shall we do?
We return to our father in the wilderness.
We will not go down to our father in the wilderness until we have accomplished the thing which the Lord hath commanded us.
So clunky. We're not going back until we did the job. Why don't you just say that? It's so much better.
If I tried. He will not give us the plates.
Wait. Let us go down to the land of our father's inheritance. He has left gold and silver and all manner of riches. He knew that Jerusalem must be destroyed because of the wickedness of the people. And it is wisdom in God that we should obtain these records, that we may preserve unto our children the language of our fathers.
I could think of an easier way to preserve your language for your children. Talk to them in it.
And also that we
If you know how to write down your history, just do it and start fresh and write down all the stuff that you can. I bet the Lord would be happy to dictate things to you. Here's an idea. I bet if Nephi returned to the tent and got like a magic rock or something and put it in a hat and looked at it, I bet that the Lord would put each word that he should write on top of that rock, and then he wouldn't even need these plates. I can't believe I'm just thinking about this, but that's actually a pretty good idea. Somebody should do that.
Joseph used these the Urim and Thummim seer stones in the hat, and it was easier for him to see the light when he'd take that position. To me, it's like having my mobile phone at my hand, and I can get messages on it that you can't see.
That's true.
and they had nothing like that. So it's just the gift and power of God.
And also that we may preserve unto them the words which have been spoken by the mouth of all the holy prophets.
Okay, we're skipping ahead to attempt number 2 now. Meanwhile, Sariah is sad. She's telling Laban that Sariah is telling Lehi that he just got their kids killed.
Once again, the Lord has commanded us to ask for the records which are engraven upon the plates of brass, for which we will give unto you our gold and our silver and all our precious things.
Zoram. It's beautiful. Beautiful. I am quite pleased with your generous honor. But thieves! There are thieves in my house! You are the thieves! Slay them! Slay them all!
And that is why he took the meeting. Actually kind of a smart guy. Kind of taking advantage of them a little bit. Less good than in the first meeting where he just kind of scared them. But they were willing to get rid of that gold anyways. I mean, I'm not condoning thievery here. Definitely shouldn't have done this, but I guess that's why I took the meeting. Our questions are answered. This is the scene in the Living Scripture cartoons where you have that amazing scene of all the brothers running away with their gold, and like Nephi is throwing daggers at all of his brothers' bags, and they're splitting open. And then you have like that weird Lemuel, like that weird line from Lemuel where he's like, he does that weird laugh and he's like, I feel like I'm getting stronger. That's where we are in the Living Scriptures version of this, just so you know. So I think we can all agree we're in the Wild West at this point. It's a little amusing to me that once the brothers like get around a rock and like out of the city walls, the guards are like, all right, we're not allowed to go over there. I mean, we're out of the city limits. You know, our jurisdiction does end here, guys. So even though the king, who's like 100 yards that way, because that was like 15 seconds of running, the king is like pretty close by, but you know, they left, so it'll be fine. I'm sure they won't come back for a third meeting or anything. Skip ahead to when the angel stops Nephi from getting his ass kicked.
We must go back. We cannot disappoint Father or the Lord.
You are a fool. You are a fool! Father is a fool!
Hide ye spite your younger brother with a rod. Know ye not that the Lord hath chosen him to be a ruler over you? This because of your iniquities. Behold, ye shall go up to Jerusalem again, and the Lord will deliver Laban into your hands.
How is it possible that the Lord will deliver Laban into our hands?
He is a mighty man.
He can command 50. Yea, even he can slay 50. Then why not us?
Let us go up again into Jerusalem. Let us be faithful in keeping the commandments of the Lord. He is mightier than all of the earth. Then why not mightier than Laban and his 50? Or even than his tens of thousands?
Let us go up. Let us be strong like unto Moses. For he truly spake unto the waters of the Red Sea, and they divided it, and our fathers came through out of captivity on dry ground.
Nephi, this is not the same.
An angel has spoken unto you.
Wherefore can ye doubt? Let us go up. The Lord is able to deliver us, even as our fathers.
Nephi, if Laban or any of his guard catch you, they will kill you.
Stay here, hide yourselves until I return.
God be with you.
Thou must kill Laban.
Never, at any time, have I shed the blood of man.
Nephi, the Lord hath delivered him into thy hands. Behold, the Lord slayeth the wicked, to bring forth his righteous purposes. It is better that one man should perish, than that a nation should dwindle and perish in unbelief.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. First question that I have, why is it okay for Nephi to cut off Laban's head, but it is not okay to show him at least raising the sword? Like it cuts to black? If Nephi was commanded to do this, and it was a good thing that he did this, then why is it not a good thing for the editors to let us see a little more of it? That just seems like a weird moving goalpost standard to me. Other thing that I have to say about this. Let's talk about moral relativity here. So in the happiness letter, Joseph Smith says, and the happiness letter, for those of you who don't know what that is, thoughts on things and stuff, or Jonathan Streeter, I don't remember what his channel is called. He goes over the happiness letter pretty well. Just put that into YouTube. It was a a letter written by Joseph Smith to Nancy Rigdon, who is Sidney Rigdon's daughter. She was very young at the time. And in it, he is trying to convince her to marry him. And he pulls out a line that says something like, anything that the Lord commands is correct. And I've actually had people use that line on me when explaining why this is okay. But I don't think that this is okay under any circumstances, and I will explain why. First of all, murder is always wrong. If a voice in your head is telling you to kill someone, you should probably call a professional and talk to them about that, because that doesn't seem normal to me. Let's put ourselves, I'm going to put myself back in the mission field, and I'm going to kind of role play this as if I'm going to role play a scenario that's similar to this with an investigator. Okay, so the scenario is they can't come to church because they have work, and if they miss work and they come to church, then they will lose their job. Okay, I dealt with this scenario all the time in Peru. The investigator says to me, "Elder, I can't come to church on Sunday. I'll lose my job." Now, as the missionary, as the person with the scriptures and the name tag, I would say to them, if you obey God's commandments and you put him first, he will bless you and he will get you a better job. You don't have to break this commandment. God will take care of you even if you risk your livelihood and you show him that you're willing to put him first. That's what I would say to an investigator. Let's do this Nephi situation. So I'm a missionary, Nephi is an investigator, and he's telling me, "Elder, I feel like I'm in a pinch here. I'm in a real pickle. God asked me to go borrow a book from one of my neighbors, but he will not give me the book. And so last time I was there, an angel told me that I have to kill this guy so that I can get the book. Do you think I should do it?" And I put on my missionary name tag again and say, "Nephi, I'm sure that the Lord would not ask you to break a way bigger commandment so that you can keep a really small commandment. I'm sure that he'll help you find an option C here. So I don't think that you should kill this guy." That's what I would say as a missionary. All right. Pretty good role play, right? Pretty good. There's another weird thing in here, which is the angel tells Nephi, you have to kill him, and it's okay that you have to kill him, because it's better that one man should perish than that a whole civilization should dwindle in unbelief. Now I have a question. What happens at the end of the Book of Mormon again? Does a whole civilization of Lamanites dwindle in unbelief? They do? Wait a second. So God and this angel, who can see the future, apparently, and know everything, ask Nephi to kill a guy to prevent something that ends up happening anyways? So he got killed in vain? What? Yeah, weird. I think that's really weird. Joseph Smith, as the author of this, should have remembered that the Book of Mormon ends with the Lamanites killing out all the righteous people, and then they roam the Americas until Christopher Columbus arrives. He should have remembered that. And you're probably thinking to yourself, how could he have remembered that? We're in Nephi, that happens at the end. He hasn't written that yet. That's actually not true. Joseph Smith wrote the Book of Mormon in kind of a weird direction. The chronology of the Book of Mormon does not line up from the first page to the last page. It's more like he wrote the first 116 pages. Those got lost. Then he started from that point and finished the book, and then he went back to the beginning and he caught up to that point. So he actually did write this after he wrote all the Nephites getting destroyed and the Lamanites winning. So yeah, he should have remembered that. If you want more information on that specific piece of little tidbit right there, that's covered in depth by the Johnson brothers I think at Sunstone. It's been about a year since I watched that video, but it was fascinating to learn that, and I will link it somewhere. If I can figure out how to link it and put it like right here over my face, I'll do that. Otherwise, it will be in the description. Oh yeah, I remembered another thing that I was going to say. So I guess the logic behind killing Laban is if I kill him, then they can't come after us, right? And so we couldn't just, because like my brain tells me, look, dude, he's already drunk, right? Even if he were to wake up, he's not really going to be usable. He's not really going to be with it or sober enough to like go after you. So what if you just stole his clothes and then did this plan anyways? And I guess the apologetic answer to that could be something like, well, when he sobers up, he could come after you in the wilderness. Okay, well, when they find him dead in the street, and they know that he had two confrontations with these brothers about this specific thing today, I think they're still going to know to go out into the wilderness and look for the guys who killed him. So the whole like, go grab Zoram and leave the city and now the coast is clear, the logic there doesn't really add up for me. This, again, seems like another weird plot hole. I think that's everything that I wanted to say about this murder, other than the fact that it's kind of poorly written and not very fun. Now let's jump back into, I think there are just a few more parts of this that I would like to show. Really want to give this video its due diligence, and then we're going to jump into some other stuff. Also, he looks nothing like Laban wearing his clothes, so I don't think he's gonna fool anybody.
Master Laban, have you returned already? Zoram, go with me into the treasury. As you wish.
How fare the elders of the Jews this evening? I know that you've been out by night among them.
I shall carry the engravings which are upon the plates of brass to my elder brethren who are without the walls.
Of course, Master David, thank you.
Come with me to meet my brethren.
Of course, Master David, thank you.
This opportunity to attend thee is to meet with your brethren of the elders in this late hour.
You sleep. Laban.
Sleeping.
The influence is Nephi. No.
Laban, Lemuel Sam, it is I, Nephi.
If you will hearken unto my warnings as the boat liveth, and as I live, we will spare your life.
I was expecting like kind of a cool scene, but in the cartoon he like chases him down and dives on him. Oh man, and then oh man, that was pathetic. That was so bad.
I speak unto you even within.
The Lord hath commanded us to do this thing. And if you will come down into the wilderness to the tent of my father, thou shalt have place with us.
I would be a little concerned if I was Zoram that one day the Lord is going to tell Nephi to kill me, because it's better that one man perish than a whole bunch of Lamanites kill all the Nephites and don't know about God. that I probably wouldn't go with them.
I promise thee, I will go down into the wilderness unto thy father. I make an oath with thee. I will tarry with thee from this time forth.
We're back to really clunky dialogue. Why couldn't he have just said, I accept? Scene cuts to black. And then we need a reaction shot from everybody? No, we don't. We know what their reaction is. They're happy about this. You showed Nephi. Cut to black. All right. Yeah, so that's the important part of this video. I think we're going to be done with that today. We're now going to listen to an excerpt from Dan Lafferty talking about how he felt just like Nephi when he... Trigger warning, okay? The Dan Lafferty stuff is actually really heavy. And if you're uncomfortable with people kind of with a little bit of levity in their voice talking about murdering an innocent woman and a child, you probably shouldn't listen to any more of this. I'll put like a skip ahead point if you want to just skip the Dan Lafferty stuff. But here we go.
When we arrived at the house, at some point at least, I hope this is not offensive to Ron, he made a statement to the effect, I guess we shouldn't ask someone to do something that we're not willing to do ourselves. And Ron left the car and went to the door of the house, the apartment there where my brother and his family lived, with the intention of fulfilling the revelation. And he knocked on the door several times, very loudly, and I was sitting in the car at the curb in front, waiting and watching and praying. And I remember my prayer at that time was specifically, if this is your business, God, that's fine. If it's not your business, you better be involved here and you better let us know. I'm willing to, if you'll guide me, I'll go whichever way is right or wrong. I don't want to do what's wrong, but I don't want to offend you by not being willing to do what's right either. Those were kind of...
and you were prepared. You were prepared to commit murder at that point.
I was, absolutely. And secretly in my heart, not secretly, but I was thinking, the thought at least came into my mind, hopefully it's just a test. And the longer he knocked without an answer, the more this thought came to my mind, perhaps it's a test, like it was for Abraham, who was willing to take his own son's life. And when my brother turned around with a perplexed look on his face, he returned to the car, and I was thanking God that it was just a test like Abraham. Ron got back in the car, and I said, well, I guess we may have passed the test. I was driving the car, and this is when what I can only describe as the most peculiar phenomenon took place. And we began to drive away from the apartment, and got about 2 blocks away, when suddenly I was overcome by a strong feeling, is the only way I can describe it, to turn the car around and to return to the apartment. It didn't make much sense to me, and I've tried to describe this, and when I've tried to describe this, the few people I've tried to describe this to, they become confused by it, and I have found the easiest way to describe what I was experiencing is to quote from the Book of Mormon when Nephi was describing his experience of taking Laban's life, where he was clearly feeling the directions, but wondering if it was right. Now, different than with Nephi, I didn't resist in any way that feeling.
Now, how long had you driven away from the house? How much time and how much distance had elapsed before you had this?
Just moments. I was maybe 2 blocks away. The car, we drove in the same direction the car was facing, so it was however long it takes to drive about 2 blocks, and I said, I've got to go back to the apartment. But being led by the Spirit is the only way I can describe this. So being led by the Spirit, I drove back to the apartment, stopped at the apartment, went to the door, and first knock.
How long did you have a conversation with her, and how did it degenerate into a murder?
I don't know how much of the detail. I've gone into the complete graphic detail with Mike King and the others, and those who he has had me share this with for their purposes. By the way, I've never misled them. I haven't. I feel that there's a purpose for sharing all this, and I won't digress into that right now. But he suggested perhaps it wouldn't be necessary or maybe appropriate to give some of the details.
No, I don't think that's necessary. I think everybody knows the details. I'm just trying to understand, how long did you carry on a conversation with Brenda before you murdered her?
Okay. It wasn't long. It was probably a matter of maybe a couple of minutes or so. And, well, the whole scenario continued to unravel. I'll go through it as much as I feel like.
Go ahead.
There's nothing I'm ashamed to describe to you. It's just that I don't want to offend the sensitivity of who may be listening, and more than they maybe already have been. I don't know. I'll just feel my way through this.
It's a little late for that.
Sense what I. Well, all right. Well, maybe I'll just spill it all to you then.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, as I stood there and she talked to me, I felt inclined to hit her, and I did. I hit her as hard as I could. I intended to knock her unconscious. My thought was, if I knocked her unconscious, then she wouldn't have to suffer when I took her life. She wasn't knocked unconscious, in fact. In fact, all it did was made her talk more, and she revealed a lot of fascinating aspects about her personality, which I wasn't that particularly concerned about. I didn't particularly like or dislike Brenda. I didn't know her. She avoided me because she didn't like me, I tell you, to be honest with you. And as a result, I didn't really know her. I didn't know the child. And maybe that's okay in the end anyway, but she began to talk about all the things that she was doing to create to try and break down our families. For whatever reason, she made that her personal issues. And I thought, well, I'll be darned. I'm surprised that a lot of these things people were saying are true, that she was more mischievous and deceiving. And
it never occurred to you that she thought you were nuts?
That who did?
Brenda.
That she thought I was nuts? Oh, I'm sure she thought I was nuts.
So that didn't in any way shape your mind thinking, well, there's a reason why she's saying these things, because she thinks I'm crazy?
No, I don't think I ever allowed myself to, at this point, certainly I didn't. At this point, I could tell I was involved in doing something that I wasn't going to let anything distract me from. I was kind of just being led by the Spirit is the best way to describe it, and I...
So when you killed her, what was your feeling immediately upon committing that act?
I didn't experience any feeling. Okay, I'll explain to you a little more.
Was it accomplishment, relief, remorse,
no,
second guessing? Was there anything that went through your mind at that instant when she lied there dead that you had done something right, wrong?
Oh, yeah, accomplishment. Now, maybe I could best couch that by telling you what, at a certain point, Ron, I guess it became a little heavy for Ron, and he suggested we leave. This is before I'd taken her life.
So he came into the apartment. You told me in the beginning that you were there alone.
Right, okay. Let me back up. I think the best way to answer your question is to go on and pick up where I left off. And,
go ahead.
And finish it. Okay, so I struck her, intending to knock her unconscious. Unsuccessfully, she continued to talk about things, so I took her and I threw her on the ground and held her. At that point, it was right there by the door. Ron came. Apparently, they could hear me throw her on the ground. And Ron came to the door and had to push his way in. And he asked me what was going on, essentially. I was actually holding her down, and I said, I'm just following the directions I'm being led to do. And he says, well, what do you think you're going to do? And I says, well, I'm going to take her life. And he says, how are you going to do it? I said, well, I'm not sure yet. Let me pray about it here, and I'll tell you. And I said, I'm going to take her life. I'm going to cut her throat. And he says, how are you going to do it? What are you going to use? And what he meant by that was I had a buck knife on my belt that I carried with me all the time. And he had a knife, which was actually the knife that was used. And I said, I'm going to use that new knife that you just purchased. And he took it out of his boot and set it on the floor by me. As it continued, at that point, Ron, for whatever reason, began to... well, I don't feel very comfortable in that. Essentially what happened, short time later, Ron said, let's just get out of here. And I turned to Ron, I says, Ron, you do what you feel like you need to do. I'm going to do what I feel like I need to, and then I'll be ready to leave. And I think that kind of answers that. So essentially what happened, ultimately Brenda passed, she fainted. And when she fainted, I didn't want her to regain consciousness because that had achieved what I intended to avoid her having to suffer more than was necessary. And so I wanted her to be kept unconscious, and I tied a cord from the vacuum cleaner around her neck to keep her from regaining consciousness. And then, being led by the Spirit, I went back to the back bedroom and where the baby was and walked into the baby's room. I spoke to her briefly and then took her life. And then I returned to the kitchen where Brenda was, and I untied her neck and took her life. And then I turned to Ron and said, okay, let's go now. I don't know what he was doing in between time, but then we left. And I did feel a sense of accomplishment. I didn't feel any... It was cold-blooded. It was a cold-blooded killing.
Wow. Okay. That is heavy. We're done with the Dan Lafferty part. I want to say one thing about everything we just heard, and that is that I believe that the blood of those murders is on Joseph Smith. The blood of those murders is on Brigham Young for teaching blood atonement in the first place. Obviously, the blood of those murders is on the Lafferty, Ron and Dan, who are responsible for ultimately committing the murder. However, this is a much bigger thing than that. This is, these are two innocent lives that have been taken by bad ideas and no critical thinking skills. And where do you think those brothers got those poor critical thinking skills? Do you think that they got them every week in Sunday school as they were asked to believe things that are frankly unbelievable? That's all I'm going to say about that. That is a horrible thing that happened, and it was inspired by this story. And the thing that's so strange to me about this is that this doesn't even seem like it would fly nowadays. If the Book of Mormon were written now, or if there were a conference talk where people had to weigh, do I follow God's commandments even if it requires me to kill somebody? The church would come down on a hard no. But because it's part of the book that the founder wrote, we have to make an excuse for it one time, even though I was under the assumption that God is not a God of excuses and God is no respecter of persons. He doesn't allow some of us to kill and disallow it for others. I was always under the impression that God treats everybody the same. And so that is a dangerous story with dangerous implications that have made themselves evident once in our history, hopefully never again. So with that all behind us, let's do some reading. We're going to start with the Book of Mormon. We're going to read, we kind of want to get a feel for like the way that the sentences flow, the prose, the word choice, the poetry, and the rhythm of it. So we are in we're in 1 Nephi 4, and I'm starting with verse 5, and I'm just going to stop after he kills Laban. And it was by night. Sentences that begin with the word "and." That's awesome. It was by night, and it was by night, and I caused that they should hide themselves without the walls. And another sentence that starts at the end. And after they had hid themselves, I, Nephi, crept into the city, and went forth towards the house of Laban. And I was led by the Spirit, not knowing beforehand the things which I should do. Nevertheless, I went forth, and as I came near unto the house of Laban, I beheld a man, and he had fallen to the earth before me, for he was drunken with wine. And I came to him, and I found that it was Laban. And I beheld his sword, and I drew it forth from the sheath thereof. And the hilt thereof was of pure gold, and the workmanship thereof was exceedingly fine. And I saw the blade thereof was made of most precious steel. And it came to pass that I was constrained by the Spirit that I should kill Laban. But I said in my heart, never at any time have I shed the blood of man. And I shrank, and I would that I might not slay him. And the Spirit said unto me again, behold, the Lord hath delivered him into thy hands. Yea, and I also knew that he had sought to take away mine own life. Yea, and he would not hearken unto the commandments of the Lord. And he also had taken away our property. And it came to pass that the Spirit said unto me, slay him, for the Lord hath delivered him into thy hands. Behold, the Lord slayeth the wicked to bring forth his righteous purposes. It is better that one man should perish than that a nation should dwindle and perish in unbelief. And now I, Nephi, had heard these words. I remembered the words of the Lord which he had spake unto me in the wilderness, saying that inasmuch as thy seed shall keep thy commandments, they shall prosper in the land of promise. Yea, and I also thought that they could not keep the commandments of the Lord according to the law of Moses, save they should have the law. And I also knew that the law was engraven upon the plates of brass. And again, I knew the Lord had delivered Laban into my hands for this cause, that I might obtain the records according to his commandments. Therefore I did obey the voice of the Spirit. And I took Laban by the hair of the head, and I smote off his head with his own sword. And after I had smitten off his head with his own sword, I took the garments of Laban, and I put them upon mine own body, yea, even every whit, and I did gird on his armor about my loins. Okay, so clunky. I mean, how many of these sentences begin with the word and, which is not, I always feel bad starting a sentence with the word and. It feels very lazy. It's just bad grammar. And keep in mind, like thousands of grammatical errors were fixed to get the Book of Mormon to the state that it's in right now. The 1830 version is much worse, and maybe one day we will read. One thing that I thought was interesting that it covers in this book, and it doesn't cover in the video that we just watched, he says, I want my children to be able to keep the law of Moses, but how can I do that if the law of Moses is on that book? Well, I have an idea for you, Nephi. Maybe just write it down again. Ever thought of that? Maybe just write it again? Maybe you could just not kill this guy, which I'm pretty sure the law of Moses tells you not to do. And then maybe you could just write it down again, which I'm pretty sure the law of Moses has no issue with. Ever thought of that? I don't know. Now let's read a well-written murder that I don't think has ever inspired anyone to commit a murder, because the point of this whole book is that this kind of broke Raskolnikov's head and split his heart in two and broke his spirit. So it doesn't exactly glorify murder and say that God told him to do it, kind of like it does over here. But also, this book is not believed to be true, nor is it believed to be something that we should emulate. So, yeah, I don't think any murders have actually been inspired by this book. Here we go. The door was, as before, opened a tiny crack, and again 2 sharp and suspicious eyes stared at him out of the darkness. Then Raskolnikov lost his head and nearly made a great mistake. Fearing the old woman would be frightened by their being alone, and not hoping that the sight of him would disarm her suspicions, he took hold of the door and drew it towards him to prevent the old woman from attempting to shut it again. Seeing this, she did not pull the door back. But she did not let go the handle, so that he almost dragged her out with it on the stairs. Seeing that she was standing in the doorway, not allowing him to pass, he advanced straight upon her. She stepped back in alarm, tried to say something, but seemed unable to speak, and stared with eyes open at him. Good evening, Aliana Ivanovna, he began, trying to speak easily, but his voice would not obey him. It broke and shook. I have brought something. We'd better come in to the light. And leaving her, he passed straight into the room, uninvited. The old woman ran after him. Her tongue was unloosed. Good heavens! What is it? Who is it? What do you want? Why, Aliona Ivanovna, you know me. Raskolnikov. Here, I brought you the pledge I promised the other day. And he held out the pledge. The old woman glanced for a moment at the pledge, but at once stared in the eyes of her uninvited visitor. She looked intently and maliciously and mistrustfully. A moment passed. He even fancied something like a sneer in her eyes, as though she had already guessed everything. He felt that he was losing his head, and he was almost frightened. So frightened that if she were to look like that and not say a word for another half-minute, he thought he might run away from her. Why do you look at me as though you did not know me? He said suddenly, also with malice. Take it if you like. If not, I'll go elsewhere. I'm in a hurry. He had not even thought of saying this, but it was suddenly said of itself. The old woman recovered herself, and her visitor's resolute tone evidently restored her confidence. But why, my good sir? All of a minute. What is it? She asked, looking at the pledge. A silver cigarette case. I spoke of it last time, you know. She held out her hand. But how pale you are, to be sure, and your hands are trembling too. Have you been bathing or what? Fever, he answered abruptly. You can't help getting pale, if you've nothing to eat, he added, with difficulty articulating the words. His strength had failed him again, but his answer sounded like the truth. The old woman took the pledge. What is it? She asked once more, scanning Raskolnikov intently and weighing the pledge in her hand. A thing cigarette case. Silver, look at it. It does not seem somehow like silver. Trying to untie the string and turning to the window, to the light. All of her windows were shut in spite of the stifling heat. She left him altogether for some seconds and stood with her back to him. He unbuttoned his coat and freed the axe from the noose, but did not yet take it out altogether, simply holding it in his right hand under the coat. His hands were fearfully weak. He felt them, every moment growing more numb and more wooden. He was afraid he would let the axe slip and fall. A sudden giddiness came over him. "But what has he tied it up like this for?" the old woman cried with vexation and moved towards him. He had not a minute more to lose. He pulled the axe quietly, swung it down with both arms, scarcely conscious of himself, and almost without effort, almost mechanically, brought the blunt side down on her head. He seemed to not use his own strength in this. As soon as he had once brought the axe down, his strength returned to him. The old woman was, as always, bareheaded. Her thin, light hair, streaked with gray, thickly smeared with grease, was plaited in a rat's tail and fastened by a broken horn comb which stood out of the nape of her neck. Was she so short? The blow fell on the very top of her skull. She cried out, but very faintly, and suddenly sank all of a heap on the floor, raised her hands to her head. In one hand she still held the pledge. Then he dealt her another and another blow with the blunt side of the same spot. The blood gushed as from an overturned glass. The body fell back. He stepped back, let it fall, and at once bent over her face. She was dead. Her eyes seemed to be starting out of their sockets. The brow and the whole face were drawn, contorted convulsively. He laid the axe on the ground near the dead body and felt at once in her pocket, trying to avoid the streaming blood. The same right-hand pocket from which she had taken the key on the last visit, in full possession of his faculties, free from confusion or giddiness, but his hands were still trembling. We'll stop there. I've been excited about this video for a long time. It is a heavy one. Let's remember that the point of this series is to analyze whether the Book of Mormon is good literature or not. I think we've just saw two pretty different cases in how two different writers maybe go after the same topic. Which one do you think was better? For context, and this is from memory, but I think this is correct. Crime and Punishment was written sometime in the 1860s, if I remember correctly. So it was really only 30 years after Joseph Smith wrote the first edition of the Book of Mormon. Obviously, this novel is written by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. This particular translation, which I like a lot, is translated from Russian by Constance Garnett. It's from the Macmillan Collector's Library. It's a great book if you're interested in this sort of thing. It's a fun book. I will link to a portion of YouTube where there's an audiobook for free if you're more into listening to the audiobook. It's about 20 hours long. I think it's 5 or 6 parts. It's really, really good. The reader does an incredible job. If you're interested in good literature, check that out. And remember to not read the Book of Mormon because, of course, it is not good literature. Thank you for watching. Do all the stuff that YouTubers ask you to do. Click on buttons and ring bells and like things. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We'll be back with video number 3. I, off the top of my head, don't remember what this one is. I haven't done my research for it yet, but I'll see you there. Be good to everybody. Be good to yourselves. Always recycle. Brush your teeth.